That's only a short-term fix. You keep printing more money and diluting something down. Saudi Arabia's going to continue, you know, if you had a printing press that could make money, and I said I need more from you, you could just print it off. Why would I value that the same every day?
Yep.
I mean, it's going to...
I follow you.
Yeah, and that is
the value that you get.
Right,
Costs
and
more
then
dollars
you
because the dollar's worth
guys
less.
want to fight this fight about, oh, we need to drill more, and they get to say, no, we got plenty of oil. They look right, you look right, but the fact of the matter is the value of the currency drops on a daily basis.
Yeah,
It's going to continue to do so as long as you guys keep printing money to pay bills that we can't afford to be taxed to pay.
That's back to the stop spending money we don't have
Right,
and stop printing.
but that's not going to happen either, so.
No.
Come on
Okay,
in.
that leads
Come on
me
in.
to a question I've been thinking about for some time. Come on in, guys.
Oh, we blew in.
Hi, Bobby Schilling.
I'm Lee Holting.
Good to meet you, man.
And I'm glad to meet you too, Bob.
I see you brought your other half.
Following
I don't
that,
even care. It's
around
Good to meet you,
for
sir.
64 years.
Oh my goodness, well congratulations.
You know, we subsidized the iPad, we got that, didn't we?
Like any?
The light bulb.
Oh,
Hey,
It's a good idea, it makes
We'll get
film
started
light.
on my question.
hi, Dick.
Howdy.
So,
I've been wanting to write a letter to the editor to talk about the commonality of what's going on in our government. And I wanted to identify 5 issues
Of course, had lunch.
that Democrats and Republicans agree on. 5
So it is.
basic issues.
Oh, my goodness.
And you know, I have struggled and struggled and struggled, and it's still in draft form. I get to English as a common language. I get to term limits. I get to, you know, I get to some real basic things. I get to an energy policy. I get to a balanced budget. So, from your perspective, is there 5 things that we as Congress or Americans can agree on? And the last one is a voter ID.
Oh,
I mean, 85% of our country agrees that there should be some sort of voter ID. You need an ID to do anything in our society. But I see there's opposition to each one of those, which seems so common sense to most of us. So, from your perspective, is there 5 things that we can agree on across the aisle, the R's and the D's?
I don't know really if there is because, like, the R's believe that letting people keep more of their own money, lower taxes,
Right.
spurs the economy, where, you know, the other side believes that, hey, we've got to have more money and we want to be, you know, control things. So I don't think they come together. I think the outcome we all want is the same thing, but it's the way that we get there. You
Well, I know
know,
term limits doesn't involve the economy, or a picture ID doesn't involve the economy. I mean, there's certain things that it should be common sense for us that we could all agree on.
Well-
And when you deal with compromise, you start with some common ground, and then you can move to the
other stuff.
confrontational, do we drill or do we not drill, and what are we
Well,
gonna do with Iran?
like voter ID, for example. You know,
Good one.
I mean, okay, anybody in the room believe that we should have, when you go to vote, that you should have to show an ID? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Should you have to, no? Show an ID when you go to vote? You think you should have to show an ID when you vote? Yeah? I mean, here's the thing, when you put that out on the floor, you know what you are?
Racist.
You know, look at, when you go to buy beer, you go to the airport, you know, all of these different things, you show an ID.
A lady went in for a mammogram, had to show her ID. They said, why do you want an ID? Well, I've got my insurance card. You know how many insurance cards are stolen? And they wanted the insurance card and a picture ID before she could get.
Well, how many things do you do on a monthly basis that you have to show an ID?
Just about
Quite a
every-
few.
In Illinois,
You go to
have
Farm and Fleet, you gotta show an ID. You go to Menards, you gotta show an ID. You go to the airport, you gotta show an ID. You go to the doctor, you gotta
See,
show an
they
ID.
say it's not a problem, but I don't know if you guys got to see where Eric Holder,
Yes.
the guy got Eric Holder's ballot. And they said, oh, no, we don't need your ID, you know, we're good. So he actually, you know, he was able to get Eric Holder, you know, it is a problem. You know, is it that big of a problem? Eric, do you know why they don't think you should have to show an ID? Why folks don't think you should have to show an ID?
It's unconstitutional.
It is.
Yeah, because it's considered a voting tax when you have to require someone to pay money to get a driver's license. And some argue that You can
What
get
about a state ID?
that can also end up costing money because older people have to send away to a hospital that they may have been born in a foreign country or another state, and it could take them a long time and a lot of money to get that.
But
ID.
don't you have to prove residency to vote? You have to prove residency to vote, don't you?
Yeah, you gotta have an address.
Address, but you gotta register.
But
I mean,
that's,
can you imagine going through life not having to show an ID? I don't think you could do it.
Some people don't.
Some have an
Okay.
Around here,
What about, so how do you protect the sanctity of the vote then? That's the question. Without an
Right,
ID,
exactly.
just to answer the question.
I would say that there's no real evidence of it being under attack. There's no orchestrated example of a campaign coming up with dead people coming out to vote. There's no proof of that. Yeah, some people have been able to pull other people's ballots, but there's no example of an orchestrated campaign.
From a
do so.
common sense standpoint, typical, everyday common sense standpoint, do you think that you could go through life without a valid ID?
Depends on where you live.
Well, my question is, that, even something as simple as that, we've got it, why can't that be a common ground?
well, see that. So what we
Why
do is
can't-
we've got to handle that objection. The objection is that you're forcing people to buy something, so it's a voter tax. So we've got to figure out a way to get people free IDs. That handles the
Is there
objection.
a compromise that you feel comfortable with? Any compromise at all?
This isn't
they?
about me here.
I know, I just
No,
wanna
no, we're just
we're
asking your opinion, because you're a pretty smart young guy.
Okay,
Thanks.
let's go on, okay, that was one of my questions.
You know, so I
How about term limits? Do we agree on term limits? Our president has term limits.
well, what they say is that first off is you've got a lot of people that have been out there for 15, 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
They're never going to agree. Now, there's a big block of people that really want to set forth term limits. And so what it is, I think it's a constant shift. I think this time around you'll see another good shift of people. I would say right now there's probably, we signed on last year, and it was a term limit bill. I think it was a 12-year term limit, which I think is pretty good, where you give, the Senate gets 2 terms, and then the Congress gets 6 terms, so it's 12 and 12, and the president does have 2 terms. But then some other people argue, well, you know, that's what elections are for. Those are term limits. You know, I had a guy that's been in for 20 years. That's his thing. So the thing I like about term limits is what it does is it allows for fresh, new ideas. You know, to come in, and then eventually at some point that person can go back home and go back to whatever they were doing. What's happened is Congress is they've made it into a career. For
Exactly.
example, you get a pension. After you're there 5 years, you get this full-blown pension that you don't put a penny into. You get, you know, there's 2 pensions that they have in Congress. One that you contribute to, which is a defined contribution, and then you have the other one, which is a defined benefit. Defined contribution, if they want to put some money into it and get matched, you know, that's one thing. But the one where you don't put anything in after 5 years, you get that. That's the one I reject. A lot of stuff is just leaked by people. For example, I brought my own health care to Washington. And I think what will happen is this next series, I think you'll see another big chunk of people switch. So it's kind of, you know, it didn't happen overnight to where it got to this point, and I think flipping it back around the other way will.
Good.
We'll
How
do the
about
same
English
thing.
as a common language?
Hold on a
Do
second.
we agree
Hold
on that?
on one second. My opinion is